Welcome back to part 2 of G.E. Moore. Last video was Moore's critique of John Stuart Mill, especially his developments of higher and lower pleasures and his proof of the principle of utility. Part 1 and the episode over Mill himself are both in the description. This video finishes chapter 3 of Principia Ethica and focuses on Moore's own unique ethical system. Also, as a reminder, while this video is intentionally in the utilitarian section, Moore is not a utilitarian. We'll soon see his rationale for why. Moore is not the only philosopher to make the previous criticisms of Mill, including other utilitarians. In particular, Sidgwick made these critiques first, and Moore learned them from Sidgwick when he studied under him at Cambridge. However, Sidgwick remains a utilitarian by retreating back to Bentham, the modern founder. Moore doesn't think that Mill's insights are baseless, though. Both Moore and Sidgwick deny the distinction of higher and lower pleasures, and both agree that ethics is non-natural. At this point, Moore challenges utilitarianism as a whole. Sidgwick says, "I think that if we consider carefully such permanent results as are commonly judged to be good, other than qualities of human beings, we can find nothing that, on reflection, appears to possess this quality of goodness out of the relation to human existence, or at least to some consciousness or feeling." Like I'm sure many listeners just thought, no one would consider it rational to aim at the production of beauty in external nature, apart from any possible contemplation of it by human beings. Moore counters by saying, well, I may say at once that I, for one, do consider this rational. Moore thinks that beauty is independently valuable despite any pleasure actually created. This means Moore is not a utilitarian because he does not value pleasure alone. But he's not content just to state this as a matter of fact. He thinks he can prove it, and he thinks that you don't value pleasure alone either. He begins what I'm going to call the two worlds thought experiment. Let us imagine one world exceedingly beautiful. Imagine it as beautiful as you can. Put into it whatever on this earth you most admire: mountains, rivers, the sea, trees and sunsets, stars and moon. Imagine these all combined in the most exquisite proportions, so that no one thing jars against another, but each contributes to the beauty of the whole. And then imagine the ugliest world you can possibly conceive. Imagine it simply one heap of filth containing everything that is most disgusting to us for whatever reason, and the whole, as far as it may be, without one redeeming feature. So we imagine these two worlds. The only thing we are not entitled to imagine is that any human being ever has, or ever by any possibility can, live in either, can ever see and enjoy the beauty of the one or hate the foulness of the other. So there will be no human experience of any of these worlds, ever. There's no pleasure or pain resulted from either world. Nonetheless, is one of the worlds still better? Moore says yes, regardless of the lack of pleasurable results. Beauty is better than ugly. So Moore is challenging the idea that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. He thinks that something can be beautiful even without perception. What do you think? Can a world be beautiful if no one can see it? If it's beautiful, is it better than ugly, despite the lack of any measurable results? To be honest, I've noticed that Moore's original example doesn't compute as well to all students, so I've come up with a few of my own. Let's imagine a genie appears out of a lamp. It can't grant you 3 wishes, though. It's kind of sort of a genie in training, so it can only do one thing. It can make you beautiful. However, the genie informs you that there will be absolutely no changes to your overall happiness in life. Whatever benefits you gain from being more beautiful will be offset by other negative things. The only thing we are not entitled to imagine is that you would be happier ever by any possibility. If you choose the world in which you are beautiful, whatever benefits you get from being good looking are negated by other unfortunate circumstances. If you choose the world where you're ugly, any negative results are adjusted through positive circumstances. You will not have any overall increase or decrease of happiness at all, regardless of the decision. Which would you choose? In this version, I get way more students deciding that they want to be beautiful. It doesn't matter to them that there are no changes in how their life will actually turn out. They value beauty for the sake of beauty, despite the lack of pleasurable results. This is More's point. Let's do one more, and this time we won't use beauty as the counterexample. Different genie also can only do one thing. He can make you radically smarter, but it will also make you radically less happy too. Your happiness is actually determined by the amount of truth you know in this case. Would you rather choose to understand the truth and be unhappy, or would you sacrifice your intelligence for the sake of more pleasure? More would, just like the first two examples, choose against pleasure for the sake of knowledge. Bentham and Sidgwick in particular must choose against knowledge of the truth because they value pleasure alone. Mill attempted to justify choosing the higher pleasure of knowing the truth, but it's extremely difficult to do that within the utilitarian framework. Here are More's conclusions. More's goal is to show that we might directly call something else good apart from any resulting pleasure. More is still a consequentialist and demands impartiality, but he doesn't think pleasure alone is good. And the word good itself is undefinable, and you can only know it through a type of moral intuition, almost like a sixth sense. For the record, that last part is discussed more fully and proven in other ways in Chapter 1 and a different section of Chapter 3. Revisiting the essential qualities of utilitarianism, More's adjustments look like this. He's still a consequentialist, so results are the only thing that matter. He is still impartial, so no one matters more than anyone else for any reason other than results. However, he is not a hedonist, because hedonism values pleasure alone. Instead, More values multiple things at the same time, including pleasure. All these things are non-reducible, meaning we can't sum them up in a single quality like pleasure. More thinks that at least 4 different types of things are good: pleasure, virtue, truth, and beauty. There will eventually be a video in the section on deontology that critiques/adds to More. Whenever I create that video, I'll make sure to put the link in the description. But for now, thanks for watching.